clear. Get it. Keep getting it. Nice right there. You're going to make it happen right here, man. Let's get up, get going there, Dixon. All points right there.
You'll be 3 wide at 77.
That's him, how you restart right there, boys. That's a ninth from dead friggin' last 15 laps ago. Way to do it, man.
WFIR presents In the Draft with Joey Self. What do you say, boys? Let's go racing.
The regular season has come to a close, and what an exciting finish it was. And now the rubber truly will meet the asphalt as we get ready for the chase for the championship next weekend at Chicagoland Speedway. I'm Joey Self, along with Kevin Scott, Tim Martin, and Randy Leftwich, really behind the steering wheel for us here. Good to have you with us. Let's talk about it. A lot to talk about. The regular season ends. We're going to preview the chase. What happened at Richmond? It really came down between Jeff Gordon and Kyle Busch. Carl Edwards is out. And can a young buck by the name of Brad Keselowski win the championship? Where do we start?
He's had a fantastic season. Keselowski has. And it would be amazing to see him be able to pull this off.
And if you look at the chemistry between him and his crew chief, I mean, this is a relatively new team. They kind of remind me of Alan Kawicki and his crew chief, Paul Andrews, back in the 90s. They kind of have that same demeanor. Brad Keselowski, he knows the cars, and his crew chief, Paul Wolf, is kind of like Paul Andrews with Alan Kawicki. They look alike, they work together, and they're almost like a single car team with Penske Racing because of what happened with A.J. Allmendinger earlier in the season. He really hasn't had a teammate, Sam Hornish Jr., here and there.
And Jeff Gordon being the champion that he is he going to be like Mark Martin? Mark Martin, I think, could pull off a championship if he were driving regularly. Jeff Gordon seems to be struggling to get into the chase.
I think it's still fun for Mark Martin. And I think Jeff Gordon has put too much emphasis on winning. And I think with Mark Martin right now, I think he's got that attitude of it's just fun to be out there and doing this. And with Jeff Gordon, you don't see that.
Well, one thing you're not going to see from Jeff Gordon is like something that happened with Darrell Waltrip. Drivers late in their careers, I don't think we're going to see Jeff Gordon be somebody that's going to take provisionals every week and it's going to run in the 30s, the 20s and 30s. But if you look at his stats over the last few years, he's really done very well. He's had a couple seasons where he hasn't won, but look at this year. Look, coming into Richmond, the pressure was on. He came in behind. Kyle Busch was leading coming into Richmond, and it looked like when the rain came out, when the rain started falling at Richmond, it was past halfway. They threw the red flag. All NASCAR had to do was call the race. Jeff Gordon would not have been in the chase. His team completely reworked that car. Remember the shot of them cutting the chain underneath the car? Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah. It stops raining. They go green. Jeff Gordon moves up to second, and he makes the chase.
He does. Joey, how did it feel at the track? You were there you were there watching the race at the track up in the booth. What was that like?
Got to be honest with you, it did not look good. Weather didn't look good. Radar was green, had a little bit of time there, and then finally we go back to racing again, and you hear the guys, the crew chiefs on the radio, drivers on the radio, rain's coming, what do we do? Henceforth, why Jeff Gordon took the drastic measure he did. And as Timothy said, I've never seen anything like that before in a race car, and for his car to perform the way it did. And then, all in all, my feeling is, had NASCAR, they wouldn't have called the race. They'd have ran it on Sunday. So,
yeah,
well, they would run it. Either way, my personal opinion, because that's a big race. You don't want to cancel it. But the weather did not look good. But, boy, it turned out being a good race, though. It really did.
If you're a Kyle Busch fan, you were really happy when the red flag came out and it was past halfway because, hey, it's pouring down the rain. They're going to call the race. Kyle Busch makes the chase. That didn't happen. And when they went green, the last 20 laps, last 30 laps, Jeff Gordon seemed like he moved up a spot a lap. Kyle Busch moved back a spot a lap.
How did the chase finally roll out there at the end? How do we end up?
Going to the points, obviously Denny Hamlin came in with the most wins, so he is going to lead the chase as we head to Chicago. Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart, Brad Keselowski, they're all tied for second. Greg Biffle in there. And then we go to Michael Waltrip Racing, and that's one of the big stories of the year. Clint Boyer is 6th, Dale Earnhardt Jr. 7th, Kenseth 8th, Kevin Harvick 9th, Michael Waltrip Racing again with Martin Truex Jr. 2 cars in the chase. He's 10th, and then Casey Kane and obviously Jeff Gordon.
Michael Waltrip, as a driver, he's never been a contender for a championship. Yes, no, absolutely never been a contender. Mm-mm. But now, as a few years he's into this as a car owner, both of his cars are actually in the chase. He's got some talent behind the wheel this time. I think that's smart for him to step away. He's probably going to make significantly more money owning the cars. The cars are winning. That's where he's going to make his money. He's won 2 Daytona 500?
2 Daytona 500.
2 Daytona, nothing else. The man wrecks every single race when it happens, but he's got 2 qualified cars this time in the chase. Good for him.
You could really say almost 3 qualified. You look at the owner points. I mean, he's right up there. If Mark Martin had run the full season in that car, he would have been in the chase too. And what Waltrip has done, I think, is so great is he's taken, I believe, the DEI structure when Dale Earnhardt was alive, and he's put the same people pretty much that were running that organization in his organization. Now, it didn't start off good. The Daytona 500 5 or 6 years ago, all 3 cars made the chase back when Jarrett was driving for him. Mm-hmm. But remember, they were caught cheating. They were caught cheating in Daytona. Waltrip left Daytona minus 125 points.
Now, the cheating, was that the one with the fuel? The fuel, the additive in the fuel.
Yep, absolutely. Waltrip says he didn't know anything about it, but first driver ever to leave Daytona in the hole in the points. And that whole year, all 3 of his cars were making and missing races. And now look where they are. 2 cars in the chase, top Cup teams.
Michael Waltrip has 4 career wins, all 4 on restricted plate tracks, 2 at Daytona, 2 at Talladega. He's won in a truck at Daytona. He's one of the best restricted plate races ever, in my mind. But he is going to end up, what he's going to be known for is being a car owner.
Yeah. Oh, no question.
And he's got a great team.
But as a restrictor plate driver, I don't see that as, to be honest, a lot of talent in a sense that that's team driving. Restrictor plate, because you've got somebody to help you. You know this is a good driver at a track like this. If he can't win at Martinsville, if he can't win at Richmond, if he can't win at Chicagoland or Charlotte or any of these bigger tracks, I don't know or the smaller tracks, I don't know that what that says. I don't think that it says a lot of talent.
Well, I mean, you've got the stats on your side because you can't go into a season saying, okay, I'm only going to win the restrictor plate races and I'm not going to run good anywhere else. You're not going to go nowhere, which is pretty much kind of later on in his career. If you looked at the thing, you had a top 10 at Daytona, top 5 at Talladega. The rest of the races weren't really good. You got to run the short tracks, the ovals. You got to do it all. He struggled with that.
But let's take a look here. You've got Dale Sr. Basically putting this gentleman into one of his vehicles. If Dale Sr. didn't see talent there, he would not have been in one of those cars.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
There is talent there for a man to win 2 Daytona 500s.
And I think what you have to look at with him and Junior, and really we have no time today to go into that, but their careers took a drastic turn when he died.
Exactly.
I mean, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would probably be a champion today. No telling how good Michael Waltrip would have done in that DEI car. I mean, he started with winning the Daytona 500. But when Earnhardt died, and then a few years later that team was taken apart, Junior left, I mean, you really don't know. We don't know what it did to those 2 people. I know Waltrip has wrote a book about it. Junior, he doesn't talk about it very much, but it's been tough.
Getting ready to say something that I'm sure is going to be controversial. It's the Daytona 500. It is the Super Bowl of our sport. Trevor Bayne won the Daytona 500. Has never won another race. Now, again, it's a team-type drive. He's in the right place at the right time. You can go from first to 31st in a lap. It depends on who's behind you, where you are, what your car is like at the time. I don't buy that argument.
Well, I don't think you can use the argument Trevor Bayne won the Daytona 500 but has never won anything else because that was only his second start, and he really has only run a few other Cup races since then.
All right, we're going to come back in a minute, and we're going to talk about Carl Edwards. He's out of the chase. That's a heartbreaker on a lot of sides. We're also going to talk about Jimmy Johnson. Can he do it again? We'll be back on In the Draft.
In the Draft with Joey Self.
On 2 tires, second up this one. Watch it right, get down. Get up. Toss in. Is out.
If you're looking for professional CPAs with a personal touch, check out Cole & Associates CPAs. Accounting and auditing, business tax prep, estates and fiduciaries, payroll, bookkeeping, account services, individual tax preparation, they do it all. Cole & Associates, 540-266-7178. Again, 540-266-7178 and online at ColeCPAs.com. Cole & Associates CPAs, professionals with a personal touch. Proud sponsor of high school football on WFIR.
Sports are full of numbers, and when it comes to your team, you probably know them by heart. Here are some numbers about your family you probably don't know. According to LIMRA, a life insurance industry research and marketing firm, as of September 2011, only 41% of all U.S. households have individual life insurance. That's an all-time low. Almost 8 in 10 Americans do not have a personal insurance advisor to turn to, and the likelihood of being without life insurance has dramatically increased for every age group since 2004. You don't like it when your team loses? How would you like it if your family loses? Call Todd Harp or Justin Ditmore at Harp Brokerage National Financial Services at 989-4600 for more information.
In the Draft with Joey Self.
All right, you are 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right, watch your shift.
Kevin Scott, Timothy Martin, Randy Leftwich, and Joey Self in the draft. We're glad you're with us. We're going to get right to it. We've talked about what happened in Richmond. Let's talk now about a little bit about Carl Edwards missing the chase. That is huge. We want to talk about the points as they head into the chase. Hendrick's cars are in, and then we're going to let you know who we think is going to win Chicago, which is the first race in the chase. First of all, let's touch on Carl Edwards. We talk about last season. You got to talk about this. It'll go down as one of the best chases in the history of the sport. Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards end up dead tied, which means every point is valuable. We know that, but Carl is now out of it. What do you think?
And it came down to the wins last season. Correct.
That's right.
They tied in the points at the very end. They finished in the exact spots that they had to have the same amount of points. So then it came down to who had the most wins. Tony Stewart had the most wins in the season. Tony Stewart walked away with a championship. Carl Edwards had a great season last year. He had an amazing season last year. This year, didn't make the chase, doesn't even have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd taken the guy who tied for the championship last year and told me he was not going to make the chase this year, I probably would have laughed. I was just looking at the points during the break. He has only 2 top 5s in 26 races this year. That's that's really bad for Carl Edwards and Roush Racing. 2 top 5s, 11 top 10s, 26 races. I've been watching races, and it's like, they don't even mention his name. It's like he's not even there.
There are a lot of drivers that happens to in regular seasons. For instance, Casey Kane, his freshman year in the sport, amazing, had a great year. His sophomore year, he didn't do anything. He did nothing. He had hardly any wins, any top 5s. So this happens in this sport. It's very cyclical.
I think something that hurt Carl mid-season, Bob Osborne left his crew chief. They've been together forever. And he had some illness, and he's left. He still hadn't run the same. I know they parted ways a couple years ago. He came back. They did great. I'm not sure what's going on with Roush. A lot of times, if you look through the history of Roush Racing, Jack Roush seems to get distracted sometimes with other series. And when he does that, the Cup Series doesn't run as well. And, I think Roush may be distracted with Ricky Stenhouse in the Nationwide Series because that's where he's spending most of his time.
This leads me to ask the question to you, Joey. Do you think the crew chief plays as huge a role in a driver's position in a race, in the championship, in the chase, and their success as the driver?
I do. You got to have a good crew chief. I mean, you got to get it done behind the wheel, which Carl we know he can, and his crew chief does a good job. But you got to have somebody that gels. You got to have somebody that knows you. You got to have somebody who can put up with you. I mean, let's face it, it gets pretty hot and heavy behind the wheel. Tempers get short on the pit box and in a car. You do have to have a good crew chief. But really, you could also say this. When the rubber meets the road and you know what your car is doing, and your crew chief says, well, don't pit here. And you said, no, I have to pit here. Then you go with what the driver says.
There are drivers that if the crew chief, if they don't have a good car, Tony Stewart is one. He can drive a terrible car and make something work with it. Jimmy Johnson is another one. Can have a terrible car, and they always pull it together. Matt Kenseth, he could be nowhere during the race. At the end of the race, he usually is a contender. Top 5, top 10, Matt Kenseth is one of those drivers. So this deal with Carl Edwards and him losing his crew chief, is this detrimental? Is this what's happened to him this season?
Well, it just we don't really know the inside of what was going on with him and Bob. I don't know if there was if eventually there became a communications gap. I mean, I think later on in Tony Stewart's career with Greg Zipadelli, I think that started to happen. I know Greg had to keep him in line a number of years. But you go back to top crew chiefs and top drivers. Back in the 90s, Dale Earnhardt got Larry McReynolds. They won the Daytona 500 in 1998. That's all they did. Top crew chief at the time, top driver at the time, put them together. They didn't have much success.
But how much did you take a look at Carl? How much did last season really take out of it? Did he spend everything that he had last season? And this season has just kind of been, I'm going to take it easy a little bit. You always want to win. But is it a point of setting back going, I'm going to take it easy a little bit. Let's get this new crew chief in. Let's kind of work things out. And 2 years from now, a year from now, he's back.
I don't know if it's let's take it easy. I think it's, it would, to me, it would be more, obsessed about the last season and what happened. I mean, I won if I'm Carl Edwards, I won the championship too.
Right.
I mean, he got a couple more wins than me, but I won the title too. But it doesn't look that way.
The intensity doesn't look to be there for Carl Edwards.
Well, you know why? I mean, I think a number of people will tell you this. He does too much TV. He does too much ESPN. He's the in-race reporter in all the races. A number of people will tell you that he's not totally focused. Yeah, he's not totally focused this year.
Sure.
I raised the question: is it an on-deck career for Carl Edwards?
Is it a what?
On-deck career.
Uh-huh.
I think it's a crime that Mark Martin hasn't won a championship. He's finished second 4 times.
Explain what you mean by on-deck career. What is that?
Is he going to be only a second-place championship points finisher?
Yeah.
Look at it. Last year, it's like Timothy said. Literally, if you look at it, he won the championship as well.
Sure.
Had Tony Stewart not won 5 races, he does not win the championship.
Thing about it is with Jimmy Johnson, though, if you'll recall, before he got his first championship, didn't he finish second and third 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row? He was right there, and then ultimately, when he won his first one, it was nonstop for 5 years. Carl Edwards do it?
I think Kyle Busch is in the same thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Kyle Busch, if you look through the years, and this year is no different, when it gets down to chase time, the team collapses, the team folds. He cannot do it in the chase for some reason. Right. I don't know what it is. But when you're comparing Jimmy Johnson, I don't know. Can you compare Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus and what they've done to any other driver right now? I don't think you can do that.
They certainly have. Speaking of Jimmy Johnson, now the Hendrick cars, they've got 4 cars in the chase. All 4, I would say 3. Amazing drivers. Earnhardt, I think he is a good driver. He's got a fan base in name. If you put another driver in with his stats in there, would they be as popular as him? I would beg to differ on that. But he has a Hendrick car. He has good equipment. I would expect Jeff Gordon to be there. Casey Kane has proven himself. He's in a good car. So it doesn't surprise me that Hendrick has 4 cars in the chase.
You and Dale Earnhardt Jr. But it's like the people that don't like him, they blame him. It's not his fault his last name's Earnhardt. It's not his fault he was born into the Earnhardts.
I don't blame him for that. I'm just simply saying I think he gets so much more recognition than he deserves. There are other drivers that do just as well and drive just as well that don't get the recognition. It is because of his last name. I think that's unfair. It's the way it is. It's the hand he was dealt. He did have an amazingly talented father. His father knew his father is synonymous with the sport. But he is not.
But he had an amazingly talented career until his father died, and the year after. I mean, he was going to win a championship. He won racing. He won at every track.
So what that says is you've got somebody on the track really playing ball for you. Somebody on the track playing ball with you. So if you lose that ally on the track, can you still win races? Jimmy Johnson can win races. Jeff Gordon can win races. But Dale Earnhardt Jr., when he lost his father, that's a terrible thing. But he didn't win any races.
Well, that ally,
he did win races. I'm sorry, he did. He's just not won a championship. He's not lived up to the Earnhardt name.
That ally's not like a crew chief. It is your father who was killed right behind you on the last lap of the Daytona 500.
Exactly right. And Joey, going in to this chase, Earnhardt. He stepped his game up from a year ago. I'm talking he's got a win this year. He has really stepped his game up this year. And I'll be honest with you guys, out of the drivers for Hendricks, I think Junior probably has the best shot at this title going in because of, the laps he's, has ran during the season and what he has accomplished this year. It's a totally
better
different.
Than Jimmy Johnson?
Yeah, I appreciate
not as so much. Now, wait a minute. Not as much as Jimmy Johnson. Now, we're looking at momentum going into the chase. And I'll be honest with you, I think right now Junior and them are looking good going into this chase.
I could go so many directions on this. And first I'm going to address Kevin because I feel like Dale Earnhardt Jr., it's sort of like Timothy said, just because it's popular is not his fault. Now, I know he's got the Earnhardt name. Like you said, he can't help that. I think he is a good race car driver. Well, a lot of people forget that he's a 2-time Nationwide Series champion. Now, I know that doesn't carry over to the Sprint Cup Series, but he is a champion. He's got a number of nationwide wins. I believe if DEI were still going, he would have been a champion by now. Dale Sr., when he was alive, that was a fantastic company. And to see that thing fold up breaks my heart because it should have still been there.
Let me ask you the question, why, if DEI was still happening, would he have a championship and not with Hendrick? Hendrick is they have the equipment. People love to have Hendrick cars. They want Hendrick engines in their cars. Why would DEI be any different?
It's very simple. His father died. His father kept him focused on racing. His father was a part of why he raced. When his father died, you saw how different he was in interviews. He just was not there. Yes, let's admit he did a lot more partying when in these last 10 years than he did in the first 3 or 4 years when he was driving for his dad. And anybody that knows Junior will tell you he wasn't focused on racing as much as he was with DEI.
He's a Daytona 500 champion. He's won the All-Star race. He's won a couple of big races. He's won 19, I think it's 19 in his career. He is consistent. He's only missed the chase a couple of times. He's been in the chase every other time that it's been here. But do I think the time is drawing near that he needs to win one? You better believe it. He's got to win one soon.
I would go on record now saying to you, Joey, I would bet you $100 that in the next 3 seasons, he's not going to win a championship. I don't think he will. I just don't think he will.
Can he win a championship? I think he can win a championship.
I think he can win a championship, but if I had to, I don't think he's going to win a championship. He would have won a title at DEI, but and I know a lot of Earnhardt fans are not going to like to hear this. I just don't think he can win a championship. I don't think he can do it.
The only thing that keeps him out of winning a championship, I believe, this year is an injury. That's the only thing I think that keeps him out of winning this championship.
So your pick for the championship this year would be Earnhardt.
Would be Junior.
Wow.
Any words on that?
We have money on this, don't we? We have money on this.
I'm going to agree to disagree with 2 of the members on his panel. But that's a good topic, and he's with a good team. Hendrick Motorsports is the cream of the crop. Now, with that in mind, Jimmy, Tony, and Brad tied for second, heading into Chicagoland as the chase restarts, or as the points are reset, and we go to the chase. Jimmy is a 5-time champion. Jeff Gordon is a 4-time champion. They're both on the same team. Dale Jr. is looking for his first championship, and then you have Brad Keselowski now, who comes in with Penske Racing, a young buck who'll say what he says when he wants to say it. Look at what happened to Daytona. He had his cell phone in the car with him. Became a sensation
during
immediately.
That race. Yes.
So, can Brad win the championship? I think he can.
I think he can.
Can Jimmy win the championship? That's where my money lays, right there.
I'd like to see a few more people win their first championships before Jimmy wins another one. I'd love to see Keselowski pull it off this year. I think he can.
Well, and I think the sport needs that. I mean, you look at ratings you look at ratings since Jimmy Johnson started winning championships, and they're just going down. The fans are not in the stands. They want to see somebody else win it. I think, look at Clint Boyer. He won at Richmond. I mean, does anybody else have more momentum than Michael Waltrip Racing coming into the chase after just winning Richmond? I think Clint Boyer can win the championship.
First race of the Chase Chicagoland.
Yes.
What can we expect there?
Well, it's a 1.5-mile track. It's to me, it's one of the so-called cookie cutter, but not a cookie cutter track. It's a fast race track. You've had some drivers over the years that got their only win there. Now, David Runeman did win at Charlotte via rain, but he did win his second race, literally at Chicagoland.
Legitimate win.
Legitimate. There. I mean, walk the dog. My pick is Jeff Gordon to win at Chicago.
A 1.5-mile track. We got a lot of good drivers. These 1.5-mile tracks. Jeff's a good pick for that track. But Brad Keselowski is on a tear. My pick would be Brad.
Randy?
I'm going to go with Tony Stewart.
Going to go Tony Stewart.
Is that where you're headed?
He's won the most races at the track. He's got 3. He leads everybody in wins. But I'm going to go with Clint Boyer. Clint Boyer wins back-to-back. Clint Boyer wins the championship, and Michael Waltrip is celebrating at the end of the year. Can you imagine that?
All right. That's in the draft for this week. For Kevin Scott, Timothy Martin, and Randy Leftwich, I'm Joey Self. Hope you'll join us again next week. We'll recap the truck race, the nationwide race, and who wins the first race of the chase.